Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Climate Emergency Mobilization Task Force Virtual Summit Series, Green Infrastructure, All Electric Buildings, Transportation, and 100% Renewable. Thanks for taking the poll earlier, and it's wonderful to see everyone. And I'd like to introduce Karina Gould for the land acknowledgement. She's the leader of the campaign to save the historic West Berkeley Ohlone Shell Mound and Village site. She had an amazing press conference yesterday. Maybe she'll share that quickly with us. And she's the spokeswoman for the Confederate Villages of Lejeune and the co-founder and lead organizer for Indian people organizing for change. So take it away, Miss Karina Gould, and thank you. It's an honor to have you here for our series every time.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here this morning. Thank you, Councilwoman Cheryl Davila, for inviting me to be a part of this amazing work that we are all doing together in different kinds of ways, but specifically this gathering that happens right now in trying to bring together our minds and thoughts to save the planet and to save us as human beings. It was amazing. Thank you so much for attending the conference yesterday. The conference was an amazing event that took place over many years, and with really with a lot of assistance and persistence from the city of Berkeley and the folks that live here, and also the support of the Councilwoman Cheryl Davila, who has really brought the Ohlone people to the forefront of the work that she's been doing by, and I just want to thank you so much, Cheryl, for, pushing forward the work of getting the signs changed in Berkeley, for getting the mural on the street, and for standing with us in prayer at our sacred sites. And so I thank you so much for the tremendous work that you've brought to the Ohlone people, the Lejeune people. We love you so much. We have the West Berkeley Shell Mound, for those that don't know, just received a designation of one of the 11 most endangered historical sites in the country. And so this right here in Berkeley is an amazing feat. We're trying to stop a development that's happened, that wants to happen on a burial site and village site of our ancestors. That was probably the first village all along the Bay Area. So please, thank you so much for your support. I'd like to offer this opening today. Today is California Indian Day, if folks didn't know that. And the state designated this as California Indian Day, and across California, all Native people organizations are closed for the day as a way of remembering and celebrating our cultures, our histories, and stuff. And if some of you might remember, about a year ago, Gavin Newsom made an apology to California Indians about the history that happened here that's not told, the genocide that has happened here in California. And I want to take this morning to reflect on what it was like here. And I think that when I was a part of one of the gatherings that Cheryl did a few years ago, I talked about what is the idea of how about taking us back, not a long time ago, but if we can imagine the Bay Area and Berkeley just a few hundred years ago, which has not taken us back very far, that every stream, every waterway, every creek that was here, we could drink fresh water out of. And if we can go back just a little while, just a few hundred years ago, that people lived in reciprocity, and there was an abundance here in the Bay Area, that everybody had enough to eat. There was no such thing. There's no conscious thought of being hungry. That there was not a concept of being homeless. That the work that we're moving forward to do is to actually take us back in time to a time where we could breathe fresh air and that we could drink fresh water. And we are putting down a prayer today for that to happen for the next 7 generations and beyond. And that work is not for us to give to the next generation and say, sorry, we left the world in a screwed up place, but to work hand in hand with our our younger relatives too, to try to figure out this world together because we only have one. And so on, I'm really happy to be here to begin my day celebrating California Native History Day and trying to figure out how do we put our lands back together. And so I want us to take a deep breath because we can right now today. I don't remember if the last time we met, if the fires had happened, but I know that I have never in my life seen an orange sky in the way that I did. And that when we take in this deep breath, we are taking in a deep breath to remind ourselves that we should never see another day like that. That we have to figure out how the work that we do to stop climate disaster includes how do we ensure that our forests are taken care of in a way that my ancestors had taken care of for thousands of years without having these huge fires that come on a regular basis. And I want us to take in a deep breath knowing that we can breathe today, and that we would like to take this breath and push it out, sending out good air for the next 7 generations and beyond. Is that okay? Let's just take in this breath. And let it go. Taking a deep breath for the waters. We're asking the rains to come and to help our relatives that are still in those fireplaces. We're asking the rains to come and to bring us fresh water. We're asking the rains to come and to gently water the plants that we have that are here that are nourishing our foods right now, and to cool us down if we're too hot. We're asking the fogs to come in and to water the grounds that we need to. We're asking the water to stay cool enough to sustain those relatives that live in the waters. If they warm up too much, then we lose our whales and our salmon and all of our relatives that live in the oceans. And so we're going to ask for the waters to stay cool and to help us out by bringing rain. Let's take a deep breath and ask them to come to us today. And we're going to let it go. Today I want to ask for a good deep cleansing breath for our health, as we're still fighting this plague of COVID-19. But there's so many other diseases and sicknesses that people have. I want us to take in a clean, fresh breath for our own selves, our health of our bodies and our minds, the health of our relatives, our loved ones. I want us to be thankful for the health that we have, but we ask that the lessons we're supposed to learn while we're sitting down, that we do those lessons so that we can have a better world. So let's take a deep breath. I want to thank you, Cheryl, for always inviting me to be a part of the beautiful work that you all are doing and the leadership that you have here in the city of Berkeley and beyond. And I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful meeting today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That was beautiful. And happy Indian History Day.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's something that I didn't know, so that's good information to have. So we're the Climate Emergency Mobilization Task Force. We've been going for over a year, almost 2 years now. It's amazing, and I'm the chair and the founder of the Climate Emergency Mobilization Task Force, and we're consist of some elected, some city staff, some community-based organizations, NGOs, and everybody. We welcome everybody to join and participate. We've had an amazing amount of participation so far, almost 800 folks in these. This is the third of the series. So I just wanted to quickly just say that. And then I'm going to give it over to the vice chair, Amos White. So thank you all for being here, and good morning.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Amos White. I'm vice chair to the chairwoman here, Cheryl Davila of the Climate Emergency Mobilization Task Force. I just put my name in the chat, and I put our links in the chat as well. I have the pleasure today to just take you through quickly, who we are and how we kind of got here. This is our third summit in our series of 4 that we have, or excuse me, 5 that we have queued up for you this year. As the chairwoman said, we are the Climate Emergency Mobilization Task Force here in the Bay Area. It's a coalition of elected officials, city and county staff, youth, environmental activists, social activists, EJSJ, and frontline community members, all here to address the inequities and the causes of this climate emergency. And I'm so proud to be working with the whole group that we have here, who's really worked very hard to bring you this summit. So we hope you enjoy this summit. I have the pleasure and honor of introducing our keynote speaker, and that is Mark Jacobson. Mark is a professor of civil engineering and director of atmosphere engineer program at Stanford University. He's co-founder of the 100% Clean Renewable Energy movement and co-author of the scientific basis, I say, of the Green New Deal. And that is so exciting to have him here with that. In other documents, he has substituted the word pioneer as opposed to co-founder, but he has been very instrumental, if you will, in this movement. And I'm so excited to see or to introduce and to introduce Mark here to all of us at the summit. Mark Jacobson.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amos. I really appreciate that kind introduction, and thank you all who helped to organize this wonderful event. I see there's almost 150 people on. It's really nice. I'm going to share my screen, if that's okay, and to give a presentation. I think I have about 20 minutes here. So, yeah, my goal. I assume everybody can see this.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, my goal is to talk about transitioning not only local homes and buildings and communities, but states and countries to 100% clean renewable energy for all purposes. And just to get us off, I mean, the idea behind all these plans, and this has been going on, we developed our first plan in 2009 to 10, basically. And the idea is to electrify everything or provide some direct heat for some things, but all the electricity and heat would be provided by wind and water and solar power. So there's no carbon capture, there's no nuclear power, no biofuels, and it's just clean renewable energy for everything. So for example, for transportation, we'd go to battery electric vehicles and some hydrogen fuel cell vehicles for long distance heavy transport, like long distance aircraft and ships and trains and some military equipment. Battery electric for everything else. For heating, cooling, electric heat pumps that will run on clean renewable electricity, some solar hot water heating, but mostly heat pump water heaters as well, some geothermal direct heating, some district heating for cities. The US right now is about 7% district heating. That could increase, although it may or may not. So everything would be electrified or have direct heat for building heating and cooling. For industry, we replace high temperature industrial processes with electric arc furnaces, induction furnaces, resistance furnaces, dielectric heaters, electron beam heaters. These are all existing technologies. And then we provide all the electricity for these different sectors with wind, onshore and offshore wind, solar photovoltaics on rooftops and in power plants, concentrated solar power, that's CSP, geothermal electricity, in addition to geothermal heat, existing hydroelectric, we probably would not grow that very much, if at all. And then some small amounts of tidal wave if that actually takes off. But then we need storage, of course, electricity storage, heat storage, cold storage, and some hydrogen storage. And CSP, concentrated solar power, comes with storage for the most part. Pumped hydroelectric storage is the most common type of storage in the world right now for electricity, except for existing hydroelectric dams are also basically big batteries that can turn on and off within 15 seconds. Then there are batteries themselves, whose costs are coming down rapidly. Then there's also flywheels, compressed air storage, and gravitational storage with solid masses. These are electricity storage technologies that are coming, or gravitational storage, for example, is being commercialized right now. But heating and cooling storage, I mean, there's water tank storage. We've all seen water tanks. There's ice storage, underground heat storage, boreholes, water pits, aquifers. The nice thing about heat and cold storage is actually very inexpensive, and it's been around for a long time. So it's actually not so difficult to transition that on a large scale. And then hydrogen, we'll need to store that as well.
Someone's not muted and we can't hear you because someone's making some noise.
Yeah, maybe who's in charge of the whole video might be able to mute everybody. So then hydrogen can be stored, and when we have extra wind or extra solar, that can be used to produce hydrogen, and it can also be used to produce heat and cold. Well, before I look at kind of large-scale energy plans, I just want to talk briefly about what people can do in their own homes. This is actually, I did this myself in 2017. I built a new home on the Stanford campus. I was fortunate enough to be able to do that. But I decided there's going to be no gas on the property. It's all going to be electric, and including vehicles and everything else. So there's 13.6 kilowatts of solar photovoltaics on the roof. There are 4 Generation 1 Tesla wall mount batteries in the garage, although PG&E only let me turn on 2 at a time, but it turns out that's fine. The other 2 are just sitting there waiting for the first 2 to retire, or if there's an emergency or blackout, then the other 2 can go on as well. But for heating, I use a ductless mini split electric heat pumps, air heaters, and air conditioners. Well, so they're one unit for both heating and air conditioning. They move heat and cold rather than create heat or cold. There's an outside unit. Well, there's 2 outside units, like the ones on the right, and there are about 11 inside units, 1 in each zone of the house. And instead of creating heat or cold, they move it. So they use 1/4 the energy as your natural gas heater or even electric resistance heater. And so they hardly use any energy, and I'll show you an example of that. And then for water heating, I have an electric heat pump water heater that extracts heat from the air in the mechanical room that it sits in. And again, it doesn't create or destroy heat, so it just moves it. So it uses 1/4 the energy as a gas heater, so it hardly uses any energy, and has been very efficient so far. For a stove, an electric induction cooktop, that most people like induction rather than electric resistant stoves because you can control the temperature very well. It boils water in half the time as natural gas heating stoves. And when you touch the stove, it doesn't feel hot because the electricity excites molecules in the pot, which has to be either stainless steel or iron base. And the pot itself gets hot, but not the stove, except the stove gets a little warm by conducting heat from the pot back to the stove, so it doesn't burn your fingers. Anyway, that works really well. And just if I look at the last 3 years of energy use, and then there are 2 electric cars, and those are powered entirely by the solar on the roof as well in the annual average. But in the annual average over the last 3 years, I've generated 120% of all the home and vehicle energy use. So the extra 20% is sent back to the grid, and I'm signed up with Silicon Valley Clean Energy, a community choice aggregation utility that pays for the extra electricity at the time of use of its generation. And so over the last 3 years, they've paid an average of $700 a year back to me for the extra generation. And I've paid no electric bill, no natural gas bill, and no gasoline bill because the 2 cars are electric. So if you actually look at what's the cost per year savings, and the numbers here on the bottom left are kind of average for average households or ranges. Well, I avoided, by not having natural gas on the property, I avoided about $6,000, and there's a range of $3,000 to $8,000 for most customers for a hookup fee. PG&E wanted to charge $6,000 just to hook up the gas, and I didn't need about $6,000 in gas pipes. I avoided electricity bills, natural gas bills, and vehicle fuel bills. So that this is for a typical consumer would save $4,000 to $15,000 up front and $3,000 to $10,000 a year. Plus, they get paid for the extra electricity. This whole thing pays itself off there's also subsidies available from the state and also federal government, pays itself off with subsidy in 5 years and without subsidy in 10 years. But like solar panels are warranted for 25 years. It's really everybody should do this if they can. I know a lot of people can't do it, but you can sign up, even if you're in an apartment, you're going to sign up with Silicon Valley Clean Energy or another CCA, for a lot of them in California, and they can procure 100% renewable electricity for you as well. So there are a lot of options now that were not available before for trying to go to 100% clean renewable energy in your own home or building. Just one example of how efficient this system is. This was my power output or solar production on September 6th of this year, which was the hottest day of the year. It was the temperature in the peak outside was 106 degrees. The inside temperature of the house stays perfectly constant all year to whatever I set it at, and I set it at 77 degrees for the summer. And you can see from this production, the green is the solar production, the blue is the blue plus the red is the energy consumption during the day. The blue is, well, during the day is consumed from the solar PV directly, and then after the sun goes down, that's coming from the batteries. The batteries are charged in the morning, and the red is from the grid. But I produced almost 60 kilowatt hours during the day, consumed 45, so it's from 14 to 15 extra kilowatt hours were produced and sent back to the grid. But you can see this is a day when they had rolling blackouts throughout California, and here I'm producing extra electricity and keeping the house perfectly at a perfect temperature. My point is that if this is done on a large scale, using heat pumps especially, this will avoid lots of blackouts if we can all switch, if we can switch everything to heat pumps eventually. That is because they're so efficient, they use so little energy. Let me move on to talk next about, can we transition the entire world and then US as a whole to 100% clean renewable energy. So we developed roadmaps last year for 143 countries, including the US. And this is kind of the sum of all countries, the results. So we looked at end use demand in 2016 was 12.6 trillion watts or terawatts. If we go to 2050 without changing anything, that's business as usual, BAU, we go up to 20.3 trillion watts. But if we electrify everything and provide that electricity with wind and water and solar, we actually go down in energy consumption by 57%. And that's because of the efficiency of electric appliances and devices and vehicles. I mentioned that heat pumps use 1/4 the energy, but when you average over all energy sectors, if everybody transitioned to heat pumps worldwide, we'd reduce energy demand 13% compared with business as usual. If we go to electric vehicles and hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, we'd go down another 21.7%. If we electrify industry, we would go to down 3.4%. Then we'd also save, by electrifying everything and getting rid of fossil fuels and uranium, we eliminate 12% of all energy consumption, because that's how much energy is used just to mine, transport, and refine fossil fuels and uranium. And then we get another 6.6% energy efficiency improvements and reduced energy use beyond business as usual. So that adds up to 57% less energy. So even if the cost per unit energy is the same in a clean renewable energy world, we use 57% less energy, so it's a lot cheaper. And I'll show you some specific numbers in a bit. Now, this is kind of the mix of how we would break up that all the renewable energies around the world to power the entire world, basically, because those 143 countries represent 99.7% of all world emissions. So worldwide, it's about 30.5% onshore wind, 14.5% offshore, 11% solar rooftop PV, 14% commercial government rooftop PV, 19% solar PV power plants. CSP is about 4%, geothermal less than 1%, hydro about 5.7%, and that all exists today. And then less than 1% tidal plus wave. So that's one way to power the entire world for all purposes. And each state, each country has a different mix, but this is the average of all states and countries. You might ask, well, how much land does this take? Well, it turns out that, well, offshore wind, we don't need new land. Tidal wave, no land. Rooftop PV, no new land. Geothermal is a very small amount. We have no new hydro, it's all existing. So for new land, it's really utility PV plus CSP. It's about 0.17% of the world's land. And for onshore wind, it's about 0.48%. However, that onshore wind is really spaced between wind turbines, and you can put a lot of the photovoltaics on that onshore wind land as well to double it up. And you can also use that land for range land or crop land or agricultural land. But anyway, say it's 0.65% of the world's land. Well, in the US, it's about 0.9%, but the fossil fuel industry in the US uses 1.3% of the entire United States land area. And that's with 1.3 million active oil and gas wells and 2.7 million inactive ones, millions of miles of pipeline, refineries, gas storage facilities, gas stations, coal mines, you name it. There are 50,000 new oil and gas wells drilled every year. So we would actually reduce land use by getting rid of the fossil fuel industry and transitioning to clean renewable energy, despite what people say that renewables take up huge amounts of land. They actually take up less land than is being consumed right now and will be consumed in the future by fossil fuels. Now, the next question is, can we keep the grid stable with 100% clean renewable energy? So we broke up the 143 countries into 24 world regions and did grid stability analysis for 3 years, every 30 seconds for 3 years. And this shows results for the United States. The top is all 3 years, in fact. It shows every hour for 3 years we're able to match supply with demand plus storage. So the red is energy supply, the blue is demand plus changes in storage plus losses plus shedding of extra energy. And we found that every 30 seconds, in fact, we can match power demand with supply with just wind, water, and solar everywhere. The bottom graph here just shows a 100-day period during the 3 years. The top is the full 3 years for the US, but we were able to do this for all 24 world regions. And this is with a future climate in 2050 to 2052. Now, you might ask, well, what was the cost of all this? What is the cost of transitioning? Well, this is the nice thing. So the capital cost of transitioning the entire world is estimated at about $73 trillion. The US is about $7.8 trillion. That's the upfront capital cost to get rid of all fossil fuels, uranium, biofuels, and everything else that's not clean renewable energy. So 7.8 trillion, that's the cost of the Green New Deal, the energy portion of the Green New Deal for the US. And so you've probably heard numbers up to like $90 trillion for the Green New Deal in the US. Well, that's nonsense. Or even 17 trillion. I think Bernie's had estimated like 16 or 17 trillion. No, it's actually about $7.8 trillion to transition. And with COVID, we've had these emergency funding of about 2 trillion. And so that's like 1/4 of the Green New Deal, what it costs to transition the entire United States for all purposes. Get rid of the 78,000 air pollution deaths that occur each year, get rid of all global warming emissions from the US, and provide energy security. And so then you can see for China, it's more expensive because they use a lot more energy now. Europe, it's about $6 trillion. Okay, but let's look at it from another point of view. What's the annual cost of energy with wind, water, solar, and business as usual? Well, today, business as usual, all energy costs about $11 trillion per year. This is worldwide. And if we go to 2050, that's expected to go up to about $17.7 trillion for all energy. So that's transportation, heating, cooling, industry, electricity. But there's a health cost worldwide. There are 7 million people die from air pollution every year. It's the second leading cause of death worldwide, air pollution is, mostly in developing countries. The US, as I mentioned, is about 78,000. That costs about, based on statistical cost of life, about $30 trillion per year. Climate costs are estimated to be about $28 trillion per year by 2050, a total of $76 trillion per year. Replacing that with wind, water, solar eliminates the health and climate costs, and the energy costs are 61% lower. They're 6.8 trillion because we have 57% less energy use and another 10% lower cost per unit energy. So we reduce energy costs 61% and social costs 91% by transitioning. This is for the US. Similar, we reduce energy costs 64% and social costs 87% by transitioning. So instead of spending $2 trillion per year on energy, we'll spend about $770 billion per year on energy, which is about the size of the military budget. So it's totally doable in my mind. But most people don't realize that this is so much cheaper. It's like not just a little bit less expensive, it's so much less expensive to transition to clean renewable energy through a Green New Deal. So let me just get to the policies for 3 or 4 minutes and I'm done. And well, so I mentioned that in 2009, we had our first plan to transition to wind, water, and solar, which was a plan that really was to power the whole world with wind, water, solar by 2030. And this, in retrospect, I didn't realize it at the time, but this turned out to be the basis for the Green New Deal's goal of 2030 to transition all energy to clean renewable energy. But we did say in this paper that even though it's technically and economically possible to transition by 2030, for social and political reasons, it's more likely that a later date, such as 2050, we get all the way there. But we did say we should get at least 80% by 2030, and 100% no later than 2050. And this would avoid 1.5 degrees global warming. We're at 1.1 degree right now. So, we're going to try as fast as possible. So that's the goal, as fast as possible, but certainly no later than 80% by 2030 and 100% by 2050. Since then, there are 61 countries that have now committed to 100% renewable electricity. That's not all energy. Electricity is about 20% of all end-use energy, but that's still good to have 61 countries have now laws or orders to go to 100% renewable electricity. There are actually 11 countries in the world that are now near or above 100% renewable electricity in the annual average. Most of these have hydro, which is the ones with an H as their first letter, as the main electricity source. However, Scotland, which is powered mostly by wind, and Kenya, which is mostly geothermal, are both not powered by hydro as the main source of electricity to get to 100%. So there are actually 11 examples of countries that have 100% or more renewable electricity in their grids, and so this is a good news. In the US, there have been 8 proposals since 2015, either resolutions or bills for the United States to go to 100% renewables. The latest 2 are the Green New Deals of 2019. None of them have been voted on, unfortunately, but at least there is a big effort to now. But at the state level, there are actually 14 states and territories in the US that have either passed laws or executive orders to go to 100%. Rhode Island is the most aggressive by 2030, Washington, D.C. by 2032, see California's by 2045. But so again, this is just in the electric power sector. But not to be outdone, there are 176 US cities and counties committed to 100% renewables. In the blue are the large cities, and whereas the red are small towns. These are just a few of them. But it's really good to see that there's been a big push at the city level, and a lot of these cities, the Sierra Club has really done a lot to try to get rules and laws passed in these cities. And
I'm sorry to interrupt. Can you wrap up? We just have a very jammed
agenda. Okay, that's my last slide, and I'll get to my conclusion. I'll just say there's 235 companies that have now transitioned to 100% renewables, including 8 out of the 10 biggest companies of the world. And just to summarize, I didn't talk about jobs, but we found we can create 28 million more jobs than lost worldwide. The land use is pretty reasonable. We'd save 7 million air pollution deaths per year, slower than reverse global warming. I think we can keep the grid stable. And the absolute energy costs are 60% lower, the social costs 90% lower. And finally, if you want more information, here are some links. And you're welcome to contact me if you have more questions. But otherwise, thank you very much for your attention.
Mark, thank you so much, and especially leave up that last slide. And if you don't mind, could you copy those out, to select and copy and drop those links into the chat? That would be very helpful for folks.
And maybe a link to the slides as well, if that's possible.
Yeah, I can certainly send some of you, one of you, the actual slides if you want to distribute them. But
if you have them on a drive or something and just want to put the link to it, that's great. And that way they could just be accessed by everybody. Thank you very much for your presentation, and we really do appreciate it. We're going to forego questions at this time for the sake of time. And if we can get you to stop recording there and sharing screen, that'd be good. At the top there. So thank you all for being here this morning. Thank you, Mark Jacobson, for your resounding talk today. Thank you, Karina, and Chairwoman Cheryl Davila. We'll see you all in a bit.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Mark. That was great.
Yes, thanks, Mark. Thanks,
Thank
Amos.
you.
Great
Thanks
job.
all for hosting. This is really terrific. I'm glad I got through. I sent some of you the slides, so you can free to distribute them.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.